Loaded up on a Tuesday. And it is a gorgeous day, by the way. Absolutely beautiful outside and crisp air, but it's supposed to be warmer today. And then yesterday I was at Channel 13 and I heard Sean Ash saying that we're all going to freeze here within like a week. But gorgeous day and locked and loaded and a ton to get to. I mean, a ton to get to.
You know how you say, Jake, there's days when it's like 70 degrees. It's like, oh, this is like San Diego weather, 357 days out of the year.
363 days a year, yep.
This is like Seattle weather.
Yeah, Seattle for another 2 weeks, though.
Yeah.
Because Seattle weather truly, Eddie, Seattle weather is going to be in another 3 weeks. When you get the drizzle, I don't know if you know this or not, Eddie, but in Seattle, what you have is the Cascade Mountain Range that is the boundary essentially on the east side of Seattle, and then the Pacific Ocean on the west side. And so therefore, the coastal breeze comes and takes up the moisture off of the Pacific, and then it cannot elevate beyond the mountains, and thus as a result, it just hangs as an eternal rain cloud over Seattle. That was more info than you needed, right? But yes, so you are correct. Seattle this time of year would be absolutely beautiful, absolutely gorgeous. But good afternoon to you on a Tuesday. My name is Jake Query. Eddie Garrison, the other voice you just heard. It is Query & Company here on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan, and a ton to get to today. We will talk about the Colts getting set to go to Berlin to take on the Atlanta Falcons. Guten Tag. Have you been to the Rathskeller, Eddie?
No, but you have brought in the Rathskeller mustard. Is that what that is?
Yes, that is the St. Elmo shrimp cocktail sauce is what in Indianapolis, in particular people that are like not from Indy that come to Indy, they think of that as the sinus cleanser. I'm telling you, that mustard at the Rathskeller is absolutely no joke. And if you go to the Rathskeller to the beer garden there, Mike, best bartender in Indianapolis, best dude in Indy when it comes to getting you a Pilsner, like one of the oil drum silos they have there. I love the Rathskeller. Love it. And they're doing a viewing party that I think that is sold out. But the Colts going to be in Germany. Colts are 0-2 in Europe, right?
Didn't they win 2 years ago against New England?
Did they beat New England in Frankfurt?
Or was that Carolina? No, it was New England.
I thought they're 0-2. Somebody look this up. I know that obviously they lost to Jacksonville and London the first time they went over. I was thinking for some reason that they were beaten in Frankfurt. I could be wrong in that.
I'm pretty sure they won in Frankfurt against New England.
Either way, third trip over, right? So 1-1.
Yeah, they won 10-6.
Okay, boy, that was a barn burner, right?
That was the game where Josh Downs was like on one leg essentially, and he had that diving catch on like a third down or something to kind of seal the game for the Colts.
I barely remember that, but it's probably because I went back to bed after it was over, and then I slept through it. But either way, at 10-6, I mean, who could forget that sort of a game? We have that to get to. Purdue tonight taking on Evansville, number one team in the country, beginning their quest to a national championship. The college football playoff getting underway tonight. And I do believe I have a very, very unpopular opinion that ruffles a ton of feathers when it comes to the college football playoff and the announcement tonight at 8 o'clock. A prediction that is going to get me roasted and people are going to hate me. But let's begin with, speaking of hate,
you know, roasted's not used anymore, right, Jake?
What's that?
Roasted is not used anymore. The kids don't say that word anymore.
For what?
I don't know. They don't say roasted anymore. I just know that.
But in what term would they have previously used it?
Oh, like boom, roasted.
Okay. So that you wouldn't say like, man, that guy's getting roasted over his opinion?
Yeah, you would maybe like 10 years ago, but not anymore.
What would you say now?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know what the kids are saying. Okay. I just know they're not saying roasted.
It will be polarizing. How's that? It will be critiqued. It will be critiqued. But let's begin with polarizing and critiqued last night with Miles Turner. And we played for you the audio yesterday of Turner and talking about Tyrese Halliburton in totality. And if you listen to that comment in totality in the podcast that he did with the other Antetokounmpo, yes, there were things said about Tyrese Halliburton in a vacuum that were like, what in the world? But then when you listen to it in the totality of his description and defense and admiration for Halliburton, you get understanding. But that is not to say that Miles Turner has not made other comments when it comes to the Pacers and his departure of Indianapolis that has led him to become now public enemy number one in this town in sports, at least of this, the 11th month of 2025. We will begin with the reception that was heard inside of Gainbridge Fieldhouse. Last night, as I mentioned yesterday afternoon, I went to, and thank you again to WTHR for having me on. I went on there, and Dustin Groves, who is their 4 o'clock anchor, was saying that he thought, I don't think that fans will boo Miles Turner. And I said, Dustin, I grew up with and went to school with a kid a year below me named Eldon Groves. And Eldon Groves used to always say that if you said something crazy, you were talking jazz. And I'm like, Dustin, I know you're not Groves, you're Grove, but you are talking jazz like the late, great Eldon Groves, because he is going to get booed, and he's going to get booed every single time that he touches the basketball. And the Pacers, and I will admit to being slightly surprised by this, but the Pacers did do a 1-minute tribute video to Miles Turner pregame. But while the Pacers were extending that olive branch, and while there were those, J.D. Spahn, who sits next to me, who applauded for Miles Turner, the vast majority did not. Here is the reception from the crowd at Gainbridge Fieldhouse last night pregame for the introductions and the quote-unquote welcome, air quote, back of Miles Turner. So, the majority of boos, and that continued through the course of the game. And Turner, I thought, was very effective. And I know that people are going to look at simply the box score and say Isaiah Jackson outplayed him. He outscored him. He outrebounded him. I understand that. But Turner did last night for Milwaukee the things that I think he was brought in to do. Yes, he didn't hit threes, but he once again was extremely active around the basket, and in particular early on blocking shots for Milwaukee. And when you look at some of the things that Indiana could use, we can go on. We have an entire season to talk about areas from an X's and O's standpoint of where Miles Turner is missed. But after the game, Miles Turner, you saw at the end of the game, and the Pacers last night did Pacer things. This is a franchise and a team that on multiple occasions last night, as I was watching that game unfold, on numerous occasions, I felt like it was over. I looked up and they were down 10. And then they would come roaring back and get it to like within 1 or 2, and then Milwaukee would go on a little mini run, or Trent would hit a 3 or something like that, and it would then extend back out. And I went to the game with, my buddy Mike Byron, and then Ron and Nick Eppel from Chicago's Pizza. Awesome having them there and sitting there watching it. And Ron Eppel is a guy that knows basketball and made several observations in the course of the game in terms of what Indiana was able to do with their tenacity in coming back. And this is not because of injury, an overly talented team, obviously. But, and that's, I'm saying that because of injury, they continue to do Pacer-like things in the resolve that they showed. You know, Jeremiah Robinson Earl was not even on the roster 5 days ago. He's halfway through basically a 10-day contract. And he's out there late in the game in the fourth quarter. And Tony Bradley is not a guy that thinks that he's going to be on the floor in key moments, but he was in key moments. And, you know, Quentin Jackson gets hurt and just goes right off the floor. Johnny Furphy gets hurt and goes right off the floor. Talon Peters in there late in the game. And Jarris Walker and Isaiah Jackson continued to start to show some growth here. And the Pacers, as you're looking at that roster and you're saying to yourself, there are guys on the floor here. There are, like, at any time there were 3 players on the floor that a month ago you didn't even think would be getting minutes for the Pacers this year. And there's something to be said about that, and that continues to be why this team and this franchise feels so connected for the fan base, and why the fan base feels so connected to them, because it's this continued plucky underdog story where in any game they are never out. They're never out of it. And I think that Miles Turner is a little bit naive in some of that stuff. More on that in a second, because I want to begin with what Miles Turner had to say in regards to the reception that he received last night versus perhaps what he was even maybe expecting. But he sat during those boos that you heard, and he mimicked with his hands the gesture of closing the book, and he looked a little bit like he was in satire of the moment, and then afterwards he had this to say.
It was disheartening, man. It was frustrating, you give 10 years of your life, your blood, your sweat, your tears, you take pay cuts, you survive trade rumors, you try to do everything the right way, and then sometimes not enough stuff shakes out. It's cool. I take it on the chin. I think a lot of people will say I said things, but I think a lot of people want to formulate their own narratives and spin it to whatever they want it to be. But it is what it is, man. Like I say, you take it on the chin, just move on.
Okay, he didn't take it on the chin. Miles Turner right there is lying to you. He's lying to you. He didn't take it on the chin. He took it right as a smack in his face. Because Miles Turner now is playing the part of victim. And let me begin with this. I like Miles Turner. I don't know him well. I don't go out and have dinner with Miles Turner. It'd be disingenuous to say otherwise, or to say that. But I respect what Miles Turner did here as an athlete and as a citizen of Indianapolis. I thought he was good for Indianapolis. I thought he was charitable. I thought he was kind. I thought he was professional. And yes, he is correct. He is correct that in the time that he played for the Pacers, the vast majority of that time, his name was linked to trade rumors. His name was linked to somebody that people were disappointed by. He was, more often than not, the fan base whipping boy in a lot of areas where the Pacers would fall short of things. He was the poster child of who can we blame for the Pacers losing in a playoff series, or who can we blame for the Pacers falling short this year, etc. And as we've gone over and I've talked about the timeline of Miles Turner and his evolution in terms of his standing and his place within the franchise, I don't need to go over all of that once again. But to say this, I think Miles Turner is a little bit emotionally immature. I think he's a little emotionally immature. Now listen to what, before I elaborate on that, Rick Carlisle had to say this morning when he was on the Fan Morning Show with Kevin Bowen, who you'll hear asking a follow-up question. Obviously, Jeff Rickard and James Boyd. This is Rick Carlisle in his weekly Tuesday morning appearance on the program, talking about the reception last night for Miles Turner and the exchange between Miles Turner and his former teammates pregame.
He came over to the bench, to shake hands with people right before the tip. That was it. Yeah.
Were you surprised at all by the fan reaction pregame or within the game when Miles touched the ball?
I don't know. I guess not. And so, if you look at everything that has transpired over whatever the period of time is, a lot of things, I guess, have been said. I'm not on those social media channels in large part, but you hear things, and divorce is difficult. It just is. I will say that I always supported Miles, completely, and I always admired the man that he was when he was a member of the Indiana Pacers. I know he's from a great family and all that, and sometimes these things are difficult, but I harbor no ill feelings toward Miles as a person. It would have been good if some of the things said were not said, and I don't want to get into all that, but some of the stuff going after teammates unnecessarily didn't make any sense, with the kind of character that he's demonstrated here. So it was tough,
Turner, in that regard, a pass. And I will say that was taken out of context. And therefore, Miles Turner is correct when he says, I think there are some people that spun their own narrative. Fine. But the problem right now with all of this last night is this. After the game, Giannis hit that shot, which was an incredible shot. There's a reason he's one of the 15 best players on the planet. And when he hit that shot and he was like triple teamed and the clock went 0 and then Giannis did the boo gesture to the crowd, that was Giannis saying and sticking up for his new teammate. That was Giannis having the back of his new teammate by saying, boo us now. That's what you get for booing your guy. Miles Turner, over the course of time that he has been an Indiana Pacer or was an Indiana Pacer, we saw him grow up before our very eyes. He came to Indiana as a 19-year-old guy after 1 year of college, and he had to figure out what player he was going to be. Was he drafted to be a 3-4 and replace Paul George as a wing scorer? Was he drafted to be a center to replace eventually, say, Roy Hibbert? Was he a rim protector? What exactly was his role? And he developed into that role very nicely. And he was a fabulous rim protector and three-point shooter for Indiana in some unbelievably exciting times. And he hit big shots and had big moments and big plays. And he is responsible for a run that was magical and will forever be held dear in this town by Pacers fans. And he is to be thanked for that. However, there was always a frustration when it came to Miles Turner that he was, quote-unquote, too soft. Miles Turner's too soft. He gets pushed around on the inside. He's too soft. He steps outside and tries to shoot a 15-footer instead of banging down low. He's too soft. He doesn't set a hard screen to get guys open going down towards the middle of the lane. And I think some of that critique of him as a player was inaccurate. But emotionally speaking, away from the game in these moments, he is too soft. He is. Miles Turner is emotionally immature with all of this because where Miles Turner has erred are two things. Number one, you cannot portray yourself as the victim while also playing the part of the villain. And I'm not the first to say that. I've seen that several places, but it is true. You can't, on one hand, say, everything about me is misunderstood, and then on the other hand, come out and say, but I'm going to be the bad guy. And I'm going to have my teammates, taunting the crowd after the game and et cetera. And I'm going to I'm closing the book on this, and I'm making hand gestures during the introductions while I'm getting booed and all of that. But where Miles Turner was most naive and is most emotionally immature is this. This franchise in this town are different. They're different. This is not Chicago. This is not Dallas, where Miles Turner grew up. This is not Los Angeles or Miami or New York. I can't speak for Milwaukee, and I don't think Miles Turner can speak for Milwaukee. He's been a resident there for like 2 months. But Indianapolis is different. The vast majority of people, not all, but the vast majority of people that are hearing my voice right now and are listening to me are doing so because they live in Indianapolis, which means many of them were born and raised here. The vast majority of people that are listening to my voice are doing so, if they weren't born and raised here, because they live here now and have adopted this as part of their hometown or as their new town, or they live elsewhere and either grew up in Indianapolis or are a fan of the Colts, which has kind of bled over now to the fact that they're a fan of the Pacers or vice versa. This is not a destination location for fans. It is there more often than not is a reason that you're a fan base. And so as a result of that, when you go to a Pacer game and you wear a Miles Turner jersey or a Tyrese Halliburton jersey, what you are saying is, I'm part of a community. I'm part of a community that is a fan base because we share the same collective, almost inferiority complex, but pride in where we're from and the way that this team represents this city. And I talked a ton about that during the NBA Finals and what this franchise, this team means to this city. And you have that other places, don't get me wrong. Maybe Milwaukee's one of them, but he hasn't been there long enough to know that. But the Lakers, there are people that are fans of the Lakers because they grew up in Mesa, Arizona, and they loved Kobe Bryant. Or they grew up in Portland, Maine, and they loved Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. The same is true of LeBron and the Miami Heat. Or Jordan and the Bulls, obviously. Or they love like the feeling of the Beastie Boys and East Coast rap, and so therefore there's an enchantment about Madison Square Garden and the New York Knickerbockers. But for Indiana and the Pacers, if you are a fan of this franchise, it means that you feel you're a part of the franchise. And that's what Miles Turner, over the course of a decade, while he was privy to that, and while he is to be commended for being a part of that, by doing things within the community and representing the franchise at the come to our house Thanksgiving dinner for the needy and doing the things that he did, what he never stopped to absorb is the fact of this. When Miles Turner, who now has vendetta against the brass of the Indiana Pacers, when Miles Turner, who feels like it was the executive offices of the Indiana Pacers and the governing body of the Pacers that did him wrong, that undersold him on the contract offer they gave him, that had him linked to trade rumors and didn't do enough to silence those rumors, that made a contract offer to DeAndre Ayton while Miles Turner was still on the roster. If he has a beef with the power structure and the administration of the Indiana Pacers, that's fine. There are plenty of people in the world today, no matter what they do, no matter what line of work that they are in, that have some sort of issue with their boss. They feel their 401k match isn't enough. They feel like they didn't get a raise in the last quarter that they should have gotten. They feel like they didn't get enough vacation time, or the company wasn't accepting enough of the time they needed off when they were ill, or didn't step up and help them out when they were recovering from a family loss. Those things happen across the board in America. What Miles Turner has not grasped, though, is the fact that the thing that makes this fan base different, this franchise different, is that this is a city where people feel they are, and they are. I'm not saying they feel they are. They are. The Indiana Pacers represent the city of Indianapolis. They don't represent just Kevin Pritchard. They don't represent just Chad Buchanan. They don't represent just Rick Carlisle. The Indiana Pacers, to the fans at Gainbridge Fieldhouse that take the floor, go out each and every night, and the reason this city fell in love with them and loved that ride of the NBA Finals was because of the fact that they sat there and watched this group of players and said, that group represents me. And Miles Turner was one of them, admittedly, but that group represents me, and I'm a Pacer. I'm not a Pacer fan, I'm a Pacer. I'm not a Colts fan, I'm a Colt. People in this town really feel that way about their franchises. And that's different than a lot of places. So when Miles Turner comes out and says, Indiana did me wrong, the Pacers did me wrong, I did all of this, what he fails to realize is when he calls out the Pacers, he might only mean that top rung, but he is speaking to everybody in that field house that feels a personal connection and identity with that program and that franchise. And he undersold how much that means and resonates with people who got tired of hearing about it. Because we all have crap we go through. We all feel slighted at work. And you know what? We deal with it and we move on. And yes, did he get undersold on a contract offer? Perhaps. But you know what? Cry me a river. He took $100 million to go up north and play for the arch rival franchise. And if this guy thinks that people didn't take that personally, then he is dumber than the day is long. And he's a nice guy. I like him. But he's wrong in this one. He's wrong in being surprised by it. He's wrong in being offended by it. And if he didn't expect it and anticipate it, then there's all the more reason why the Pacers didn't offer him a long-term, big-time deal, because there was still growing up to do, and they just decided that it might as well happen on somebody else's watch. I thought last night the Pacers, despite the fact it was a disappointing outcome and Giannis made an unbelievable shot, continued to exhibit the things that this city, this fan base has fallen in love with. And Miles Turner got to witness it. And deep down, I think he knows it. Deep down, I think he knows it. And after the game, I did see him giving a lot of handshakes and hugs to different people. But deep down, the reason he was hurt, the reason he felt it was a slap in the face is because in reality, he still has that same love that everybody else has about this city and that franchise. And he felt slighted that he wasn't a part of it. And I get it. I get it. But it was loud. The boos were loud, no question. Colts getting ready to go overseas, and the intangibles that go into that, the things that go into an NFL team and why it is the Colts are going back now to Berlin. Did the NFL pick that? Did the Colts request it? It's a home game. How does that work out? Does that mean that they get like all of the sauerkraut sales? I don't know. So we're going to go to West 56th Street and find out some of that next. So the Colts will be in Berlin. Now, we need to brush up on our German, Eddie. All I know so far is Guten Tag, right?
Yeah, that's all I know. And that's good day.
That is good day, right? There's got to be a good evening. Now, did you say that Ben is already in Berlin?
He is.
Okay, so it would be good afternoon. Ben Guerrero is the Director of International for Marketing and Community Impact for the Indianapolis Colts and joins us on the Java House Peel and Pour guest line. Ben, what other German phrases do we know besides Guten Tag?
I don't know if we could say I'm on the radio, but we've got a lot of Gutens. You got Guten Morgen's morning and Guten Abend is good evening. So depending on the time zone.
Do you know all kinds of profanities in German also? Was that implied there?
That seems to be the first thing people teach you here. So,
all right, fair enough. Let's begin with this. And pardon my naivete, but I do find this interesting, okay? Director of International in terms of marketing and community impact. Now, I'm no Rhodes Scholar, but that tells me that your job is to continue the marketing from an international standpoint for the Indianapolis Colts. Do you find, I mean, obviously there's a concerted effort from a European standpoint, but what other, I guess, avenues and or challenges does that job and that title have in terms of the growth of the Colts?
Oh, I think we're learning a lot of that right now, especially with the Berlin game. I think, there's obviously cultural differences, but, just in terms of getting permits and getting approvals to do things that we can do and we maybe even take for granted in the U.S., not quite the same process here in Germany. So, we're trying to put on a great time for fans, but there's a lot more, we'll call it red tape to jump through to make something happen over here.
Okay, so let's get to this, Ben. When you talk about the things that you're putting on, for fans that are coming over, because this is technically a Colts home game, correct?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, so for the fans that are coming over, people from Indianapolis that may be coming over, are there events that you are trying to plan or things that you're trying to do for people to be able to celebrate the Colts once they are in Berlin, and what would that calendar be of things that may be taking place?
Yeah, definitely. We want to make this a celebration of not just, American football, but the Colts and keep fans from other countries, but also from the U.S. excited and really, prepare for the game. We have events pretty much starting all week, but on Thursday through Sunday, we're really going to try to hit things hard here with what we're calling our Colts fan zone. It's downtown, right in the middle of central Berlin. We'll have 2 different team pubs. We've got kind of some football activities and some entertainment, DJs. We've got some alumni coming over, some Colts legends, and just a general, trying to bring some of that tailgate culture to Berlin. And it's something that we've found the Germans do. There's a huge fascination with the tailgate culture.
Okay, the team itself, Ben, and for the marketing standpoint, you guys obviously, will be there by Thursday. For the team, and maybe this is more a question for the football operations standpoint or side of it, but do they treat it like any other road game in terms of their travel and arrival days, or does this necessitate for the roster or the administration itself to get there earlier to be able to partake in appearance or any of the things that go on in Berlin?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think, the NFL-led games, so most of the international games are NFL-led. I think the Jaguars are the only team that play 2, and one of them is a fully Jaguar game, if you will. But for the NFL-led games, which is what this Berlin game is, there's a lot of media and things like that the team has to go through when they land. So they'll get in Friday morning and go through some walkthroughs and team practice things, and then they'll get, some of that media out of the way. Just really trying to promote the game here in the new market and create that excitement for the German culture too. So it's a little different. I think every team kind of looks at it in a different way. I think I even saw the Rams for one of their games. They flew in the day before, which is kind of a new thing. Teams usually like to try to get in a little bit earlier with the time zone change, but yeah, the team will get in Friday, and then from right there, it's kind of sprint mode for the rest of the weekend.
Hey, how's the weather over there?
It's dark. It gets dark very early over here, but that'll push people to our pubs hopefully. So it's a little chilly, but it's good football weather.
Okay, so we're basically, I would assume pretty similar to what Indy has right now. For people that are coming over and what they need to prepare for, like in the 40s probably?
Yeah, I'll say like probably 40s, 50s. Sweater weather for sure. Bring some beanies if you got them, and otherwise, it's been pretty pleasant though during the day. Sun's out. We haven't had any rain, so yeah, it should be exciting.
Ben Guerrero is our guest. He's the Director of International Marketing and Community Impact for the Colts. He's on the Java House Peel and Port guest line. Colts and Falcons coming up Berlin on Sunday. Ben, do you guys do much in terms of working in partnership with the Falcons franchise as well and some of the prep work that you have to do, or is it pretty much totally each franchise on their own?
It's interesting internationally. Obviously, domestically, teams have their territories that they kind of have to stick to, but it's kind of everyone for themselves over here in the international side. So we do have some teams that we work pretty closely with, but for the most part, everything we do is kind of on our own. We try to, where we can maybe join forces, maybe on a watch party or something like that. But for the most part, we've kind of been over here trying to do things on our own. And, we do a couple little things with the Falcons, but for the most part, it's going to be all Colts over here.
How did the Colts get picked for this?
That is a great question. I think it's a little bit of, we've had Germany as kind of one of our focuses internationally. There's a huge growing interest in football and a lot of connections, obviously, with Indiana too. It's definitely something that the NFL makes the final decision, but I'm sure we definitely wanted to try to make, sway their decision a little bit if we could. So, you kind of raise your hand and say we're interested, and also there's also requirements in terms of teams every few years have to host a game, and we hadn't hosted one yet. So we were kind of on the clock, and obviously with the first regular season game ever in Berlin, it was a great opportunity for us. So We're really excited.
Well, what's interesting to me, Ben, or I guess that I become overly intrigued by, is the fact that this is, again, a quote-unquote home game, meaning it's one less game that would normally otherwise be in Lucas Oil Stadium. So does that mean that the ticket sales, even if a guy, two guys in Berlin that are like, you know what, let's just go and check out American football, and so they go and they buy 2 tickets, does that mean that a bigger percentage of the revenue goes to Indianapolis versus Atlanta?
That is a great question. I think it is a Colts home game, but it's really kind of an NFL-led game. So there's a lot more kind of from the NFL side in terms of the tickets, in terms of concessions, all that. So we do get us and the Falcons get a position or a portion of those tickets, but the NFL for the most part controls all of those aspects, and that's what we've kind of been learning as we go here.
How big a stadium is it?
It's going to hold between probably 65 and 70. So we were at we went to the soccer match this last Saturday just to get an idea, and it was about 74 for soccer. But I think it's going to be a little bit less for football, so probably in the upper 60s.
Those soccer fans, hooligans, right? Are they hooligans? Did you see fights where they're hooligans?
We actually were told to leave early because it was going to be a rowdy post-game, we were told.
Heck yeah! Let's go. The Miles Turner of Berlin was returning, Eddie, after having spurned them. Now he's over playing for the Frankfurt club, and people were just livid over it, right? Things got a little bit testy. So, Ben, in terms of the tickets itself, 65,000, 70,000, is this a sold-out game? I mean, I realize now, like, it's not like people are going to be like, oh, I'm just going to hop on the Bird in Indy and buy a ticket tomorrow. It gets a little pricey. But is it sold out, and what percentage of tickets, or would you know, are people that are German that have not seen football before?
It is sold out. It's definitely something when we've been over here, it's been a very hard ticket for people to get. I would say it's definitely less than 50% German. Like there's a lot of other countries that are over here that also, buy into it, including Colts and Falcons fans. So I think it's probably going to be 50-50 around that. But there's a lot of German fans that, have not experienced live football. This is kind of a bucket list for them. And, it's very fascinating to see the interest in American football over here.
Had you been over there before? I mean, obviously I would assume in preparation for this, but prior to this, announcement between Indianapolis Colts and Berlin, had you been over there, Ben?
So I had not been to Germany before this role, and then I've been in this position for 16 months and been over to Germany 8 times now because of some site visits. So we've definitely been in Berlin creating content and trying to find some venues for all of our parties and everything like that. And so it's been fun to learn, but definitely been over here a lot now the last few months.
everything pretty centralized in terms of for fans that are coming over. I want to go over this one more time in relation to the stadium and where the fan zone events and the pubs are going to be. Is it pretty fan friendly, or is it something that you're going to spread out and maybe take advantage of mass transit and Uber and that kind of thing?
I would definitely say for game day that mass transit's the best way to go. The train system is they're very used to it for the soccer matches. But our pubs and all of our activations are in central Berlin, right pretty much in the middle of the city. So we really wanted to make it a one-stop shop. You could come. I mean, we've even got these COLTS rickshaws that'll take you from bar to bar. So
well, that's fun.
I want people to take advantage of those. And we're right in the middle of Berlin.
The rickshaws. I like that. Newman and Kramer got the rickshaw thing going in Berlin. I like it. Ben, we appreciate it, man. Enjoy it over there. And then now, how do you say? You said Guten Tag is that's good day, right?
Yes, like good day, good afternoon.
Have you learned how do you say goodbye? Do we know that?
Truce.
Choose?
Truce, yes.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll give you that. Now, hold on. That's like truce or choose?
It's like a TSHU sound, like chew, like choose.
Eddie is staring at me.
Chow, too. There's a lot of chow out here.
Yeah, chow. The Italians are big on that, too. All right, we'll give you a chow, Ben. But certainly enjoy it, all right?
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate that.
All right, chow truce. See how we did that, Eddie? Chow truce. I don't know if you know this or not, but on this program, we like to educate and entertain. We like for people to become bilingual. Like I just know this, for example. Earlier I said I have an opinion that's going to get me roasted. And everybody said, no. You need to say cooked.
Yep.
The kids say cooked now.
Yep.
I'm not overly concerned about, the street cred that I can get amongst those of the 15 to 22 crowd. But demographically speaking, the sales department would like me to do so. So I'm trying to get younger. So therefore, I'm going to come back. I'm going to give you an opinion about tonight's college football playoff ranking, and I'm going to get cooked for it.
But first, you need to thank Ben for joining us on the Java House Peel and Pork guest line, Jake.
I do, as a matter of fact, because even though we gave him the choose and the chow, you can always, by the way, at javahouse.com get 25% off. Jake25 is the discount code, and enter my name. You can enter Jake, you can enter Query, or you can enter 1075 The Fan, and you can get the bundle, which includes Colombian coffee, the Wrangler Energy, and the Liquid Science Arctic Freeze and orange-flavored hydration drinks. All available to you and you get like double discount if you use the Jake25 at javahouse.com. We come back, I'm going to get cooked based on what the kids say about an opinion I have. Berlin. And yes, I have a take on the college football playoffs that will get me cooked. But if you're going to go over to Berlin, perhaps you're going to cook with a Jagerslo, which is known as the hunter's sauce, or perhaps a Ramso, which is a cream sauce. It might be, for example, that Königsberger Klopsch is your favorite sauce. That's a creamy white sauce made with capers, traditionally served with German meatballs. Eddie, I don't know which sauce it might be when it comes to German sauces that one might prefer as a Colts fan when they go over, but it turns out that the Colts actually will be taking their own, if you will. Not one, but two first-round picks are on their way to New York, specifically New Jersey, I guess, technically speaking, in exchange for Sauce Gardner, who in 48 games in the National Football League has started all 48 of them for the New York Jets, one of the best when it comes to, and that is the reason that he is in the midst of a 4-year, $120.5 million extension with the Jets. The Detroit native, who is a corner, is on his way to Indianapolis now as a Colt. A blockbuster deal here, and the NFL trade deadline, it is hard to think that there will be a bigger deal that comes on this NFL trade deadline day. Sauce Gardner, so far in his career, as I had mentioned, when it comes to 48 games played, has 48 starts. And along with that, he has a total of, I'm looking here, 3 interceptions? He is kind of a lockdown guy where you don't necessarily throw in his direction.
Absolutely, Jake.
So that number is a little bit hard to gauge.
He was the Defensive Rookie of the Year in 2022, of course. He played college at Cincinnati with Alec Pierce. He was the 4th overall pick in the 2022 NFL Draft. He's a 2-time first-team All-Pro member, 2-time Pro Bowler. Just another lockdown corner. It makes you wonder about the future of Trevarius Ward right now, at least for this season, for the Indianapolis Colts. And it's a little bit of a head-scratcher in the regard to me, Jake. I understand that you want to go get another lockdown corner, but I felt like maybe pass rusher was probably a more premier need for this team right now than another corner. But I'm not complaining just because of the talent that Sauce brings and the level of ball, I would say ball hawkingness. I don't know if that's a word, but yeah.
If you look at some of the pass rush that would have been available, okay, and getting to, whether it be Trey Hendrickson in Cincinnati, and look, the trade deadline we still have a couple of hours left here, well into John's show before the clock will strike midnight on the trade deadline. So it is entirely possible that Chris Ballard is working the phones in regard to that. But if you can't get pass rush, and Liatu Latu is starting to show a little bit of life there, right? But if you can't get pass rush, then the second best thing is to make it so that you get coverage sacks. And coverage sacks, of course, meaning that the longer a quarterback has to wait before anybody can get themselves open, then the longer you are giving your pass rush, albeit if it's one that's anemic, to get to the quarterback. And perhaps that's what this is let's go ahead and just shut that down in general. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is if the Colts are willing to give up 2 first-round picks, and they put themselves now in position from a salary standpoint where you're taking on a big ticket here in Sauce Gardner. But if the Colts are looking at it and they're saying, this is a guy that is a big-time piece for us, and if they feel truly like this is a piece that pushes them in and gets them further along here of what their goal and where they want to be, then that first-round pick becomes less valuable. And I know that sounds crazy, but haven't we seen in the NFL draft, how many times do we see where the Colts are drafting, 18 to 30, and in this case they are in position now, and Chris Ballard is probably looking at it saying, you know what, if I get Sauce Gardner and we stay healthy, then we are pushing in now as a legitimate AFC contender and potential Super Bowl contender. And if that's the case, then these 2 first-round picks, assuming it's of the next 2 years, are going to be 29, 30, 31, somewhere in there. And you know what? We are not going to get our window right now. If you look at the Colts, he clearly is thinking to himself, our window right now is, let's say, 2 to 4 years. And if that's the case, then you get yourself a first-rounder this year, and in the National Football League, a first-rounder. We see it with Liatu Latu. We see it with Alec Pierce, which I realized was a second-rounder, but the first player they selected that year. If you look at those players, it takes in the National Football League 1 to 2, and then oftentimes not into year 3 before a guy really starts to show who he is. You have that now in Sauce Gardner. He's 25 years old, in the middle of a big-time contract, no question. But what you did is you said, we are pushing forward our timeline, and the Indianapolis Colts just declared, for those of us that are talking about, what do they do with Daniel Jones? What do they do? The Colts just determined our time is right now. Our window is right now. We just opened it up. And Sauce Gardner is on his way to Indianapolis. Again, just signed recently, I believe, heading into this year, 4-year, $120.5 million extension. And the Jets, yesterday we did the survey, who's the worst team in the National Football League? Probably the Jets. They're right up there. If they're not the worst, they're among the 4 worst. So the Jets are saying, tear it down, rebuild it.
So as of right now, the Colts have 5 more years of control of Sauce Gardner. They have a potential out after the 2028 season, heading into the 2029 year.
So there you go. Reaction to that, we'll see what that means for Stephen Holder. And by the way, my college football comment, Indiana should be the number 1 team. Say what you want about Ohio State. Ohio State fans, blow me up, cook me up, do whatever you want. Indiana has the most impressive win of the year, and the Indiana Hoosiers, they won't be, but the Indiana Hoosiers should be tonight the number 1 team in the very first college football rankings, which usually doesn't mean much anyway because I think Mississippi State was one year. I mean, what's that mean, right? All right, we'll come back. We'll see if we can get a hold of Steven. Your thoughts, Sauce Gardner, a Colt, 239-1070 next. Okay, so let's get right to it. Todd, Mo, John, we will get to all of you. But the big story, if you are just joining us today, if the Colts are going to claim their real estate now amongst the top of the AFC, they now have the Gardner to go with it, because Sauce Gardner, it would appear, is a piece that they think can get them there. They are sending 2 first-round picks to the New York Jets for the 25-year-old corner who has led the NFL in pass deflections. He has started all 48 games that he has played in the National Football League heading into this year. Stephen Holder joining us now. Java House Peel and Port guest line from ESPN.com. Stephen, there is some report that A.D. Mitchell is also part of this deal and on his way to New York. Let's begin with that. Are you hearing that aspect of this?
I don't have the details confirmed yet. So now I will tell you that I have been speculating for a while that A.D. Mitchell could be a party to any trade conversation the Colts would have, because he is one of the few pieces I think that they would be willing to part with. So let's see if we can get all the loose ends tied up, but that wouldn't stun me. Let's be honest. You can look at his snap counts. You can see how much or how little, frankly, he's playing. That's not a secret. So let's see, though. I cannot confirm that just yet.
Okay, let's go to part 2 of this, and that is Sauce Gardner. The other, when you look at Sauce Gardner, Charvarius, Mooney Ward, and, obviously Kenny Moore, that is a pretty stout room. But is there the possibility that this move tells us something about Mooney Ward and his availability, or concern about that because of the fact that he has the 2 concussions and is still in protocol?
No, not at all. He will be back 1,000%.
Okay, so this is in addition to and not in place of.
Correct. In fact, there's a strong chance. I think he's eligible after the bye, if I'm not mistaken, to come back if I have my dates right. But when the 4 games he misses could in fact be the extent of his absence. Talking about Mooney Ward, so this is going to be, on paper, one hell of a secondary. The best I've seen in my time, at least on paper, with covering this Indianapolis Colts team. So listen, I had been told from the highest levels they were looking at defensive ends. They were getting shut down, and for the most part, that those conversations didn't go anywhere. This is last week. So they have been trying for a couple weeks now to land an impact player, but it wasn't going anywhere. And so they were also checking in on corners. Most of the corners who have been moved in the last week or so had been slot corners. They don't need that. They love Kenny Moore. He's having a great year. So they just weren't finding workable deals to get them what they wanted. But they were trying. They were trying pretty hard. I didn't think they were trying Sauce Gardner hard, but they were trying to get a player of substance, and this is certainly that.
Okay, Stephen, because here's what I said earlier, and tell me if you agree with this or if this jives with your thought on it. We could sit there and talk about pass rush.
And by the way, real quick, we're now at ESPN confirming, yes, A.D. Mitchell is a part of this deal. I think that's frankly good for him. Give him a fresh start, frankly. Go ahead.
Eddie, do you have the breaking news sounder, please? Stephen Holder and ESPN reporting that A.D. Mitchell is part of the trade that sends Sauce Gardner to Indianapolis. That now official, though, but so flippantly playing that. But so Stephen, I was talking about pass rush, and I think this jives with what you're saying there. If you can't go out, and Liatu Latu is starting to show a little bit, right? Sometimes it takes first-rounders a while, but you've got DeForest Buckner, you've got Kwity Paye, who I think is a guy, and then you've got, Liatu Latu there. It makes things an awful lot easier now if you can get more coverage sacks, and you now are basically putting it in a position where quarterbacks are going to have to stand in that pocket for a while, and you just bought more time for that pass rush to get to them. So this indirectly addresses that need, correct?
Oh, listen, I've been saying for actually a couple of weeks now, or several weeks, I firmly believe if they had a more solid starting group in the secondary, that that pass rush would be a lot better. And it's not anybody's fault. I mean, there have been just a litany of injuries, okay? And they have been playing, in some cases, I'm just going to be honest, they've been playing practice squad level corners before Jalen Jones came back this past game. So I think you have to factor that into the evaluation of that pass rush, right? I mean, they're playing with one half of the equation. It is, you have to have both. The rush and cover, right? That is what Tony Dungy always talked about. Well, they have the rush, they didn't have the cover. So now you're bringing in the cover in this new acquisition, and then you're going to also get 2 years ago what was an all-pro guy in Mooney Ward back in a couple weeks. I mean, that changes the entire calculus. If you are an opposing quarterback, Patrick Mahomes is going to turn the film on now and be like, well, shoot, this is going to be different, right, when they come back from the bye. So, yeah, I like this. It's aggressive. 2 first-round picks is a lot. I don't know. We'll see. We may one day feel differently about it, right?
But, Stephen, theoretically, would you agree with this? Chris Ballard is looking at it and saying, you know what, look, nobody covets draft position more than Chris Ballard, but he also has to look at this and say, presumably, these aren't top 10 picks. I mean, if Sauce Gardner is able to play and be healthy, you're talking about surrendering a couple of late 20s, early 30s picks, right?
Yeah, I mean, right now, unless they go in the tank, they're picking in the low 20s.
Right.
Right? So, I mean, I agree with you. I think that you can maneuver up and down the draft board, get you, steal you a couple of higher picks, move around, get you a second round pick or something. I think there are ways to account for that and to make up for that, and look, Chris Ballard is a very good drafter. I think regardless of what you think about him, that remains true. He does a good job in the draft. I mean, look at their current team. This is a homegrown team, and they're 7-2. So whatever you think of Chris Ballard, you have to say, look, he drafted these guys all up and down the roster who are killing it right now, right? So, but I think this goes to show you that this is a special opportunity they feel that they have this year. That's my big takeaway here, is that Chris Ballard's never been here. Okay, he has never been here with the best record in the NFL, and it changes all of your approach to things. It changes when you have a unique situation.
Stephen Holder, and I know we got to let you run here in a second, Stephen, because I can only imagine how busy you are. Java House Peel and Pork guest line is where we're talking to Stephen from ESPN.com. A couple of things real quick. Number one, do you anticipate this is the end in terms of Chris Ballard for today, or do you think there are going to be more moves between now and the 4 p.m. deadline?
Probably it, but I can't rule it out. Like I said, they were looking at pass rush, and let's say if something comes available, I mean, I think they'll look at it. So we'll see. I think these last couple hours, the deadlines spur action. So they had been looking before. Would they just up and stop looking now? I don't know that I'm prepared to say that. So let's see how this goes the next couple hours.
Stephen, have you guys already chatted with Lou Anarumo today?
We did, just before this came out. We did.
Oh,
yeah.
shocker.
And he had to have known, but yeah, he did a good job of not letting on. So good for him.
Stephen, the other side of this would be this. Had you heard, I mean, obviously the Jets are in a position where it's probably rebuild time, but had you heard any rumblings that Sauce Gardner was somebody that was going to be made available, and what does it tell you from the New York side about Sauce Gardner?
I guess, look, I think there's been a little bit of ups and downs with him, right? He had that brilliant rookie season, and then a couple injuries, maybe just sort of some middling play. I haven't watched him, certainly intimately every week, but I do think there's sometimes a player like that, maybe a reset can be good for you, right? I'm not saying that he was some kind of malcontent, and I don't know what the inner workings were there and what was going on with him, but I think this is certainly going to be an opportunity for him, to go play for a team that thinks they're contending this year. I mean, if that doesn't get you going, I don't know what else will. So I expect him to come in here and see this as an opportunity.
Stephen, when will the team head to Berlin, and will Sauce Gardner be with them?
Well, still working through confirming that, but I think the odds are good that he will be with them. They leave Thursday night, so they need to get his butt on a plane as soon as possible and see if they can make this happen. I don't think you make this deal and you say, well, let's just wait around. No, I mean, you get to it, right? I mean, Micah Parsons got traded and played a couple days later, if I recall, right? And so, I don't think this is necessarily any different, assuming he's healthy and didn't get banged up this week or anything like that. So, but not a promise. It is a lot to ask, right? To fly here from New York, get on a plane to Berlin, and play 2 days later. That's a lot, but I think it is doable.
Listen, they can just pick him up on the layover. They got a layover at JFK on the way, right? They just pick him up and then you know.
Look, the Irsay family has 2 jets. Send them one, damn it.
Fair enough. All right, Steven.
They have an extra jet, right? Send the other jet.
That's right. They've got. Well, listen, they got 2 jets now. They got a third, right? I mean, let's be real here. They just got one. All right, Steven. Appreciate the time as always.
All right, thanks for the dad joke.
That's right. That's what I do. I'm the only guy with no kids that has dad jokes all over the place. Stephen Holder joining us, Java House, Peel and Pour guest line.
I have no kids.
Did you have dad jokes?
I've got dad jokes all the time, Jake.
Todd, 239-1070, joining us. Sauce Gardner, a Colt. What's up, Todd?
Team manager of the Blind Squirrels.
Oh,
true.
Okay. Let's hope this is a better move than some of your fantasy moves that you made at the Chicago's Pizza fantasy draft. But I'm right there with you, Todd, so I'm not throwing stones.
Heard. I actually won 2 games in a row. But hey, nonetheless, I think this would be what's the parlance and this century. This is a splash move, I would say. It's not Eric Dickerson, but it's every bit of a Forrest Buckner move, I would suggest. You mentioned something because I was kind of thinking the same thing you were about Ward. If they knew something about Ward, 2 consecutive concussions, and not being able to come back. But the other thing is that I think going into the year, Ballard was kind of playing for his job, and now I think he's probably secured his job going forward. I would be curious as to your guys' opinion on that. But this is obviously a big move for the Colts defensively. And then how much money is he going to give Josh Downs to take over the number 1 jersey
True.
on the roster?
True. Yeah, now, here's the thing. Yeah. Todd, I appreciate it. Good points all around, right? Number 1, let's begin with this. In terms of Chris Ballard, I have no idea, but this move implies that, as Stephen Holder just said, Chris Ballard is in new territory with Indianapolis, and he believes they have the team right now to push in. And the window is there. The window is now. He's 25 years old, Sauce Gardner, and he is in the midst of a big-time contract. But they just pushed all in. And if they're going to send 2 first-rounders and A.D. Mitchell away, then they're pushing all in. Secondly, in terms of Ballard's job security, I think it's secured because, number 1, the results are there. Number 2, when you look at, and I don't know this, I'm going strictly off of just observation. But for Carly Ursay-Gordon and the Colts, you would be in a situation where this is new to her as well in terms of being where the buck stops. And seeing the example of her father and knowing what Chris Ballard meant to her dad, my assumption would be that when you are going into now a brand new situation, and yes, Carly Ursay-Gordon, there are going to be many areas we have already seen where she has put her thumbprint on things within the franchise and some of the changes off roster, non-football operation in terms of personnel and those things that have taken place. But when it comes to the primary purpose of the family business, which is football, I think you would most feel comfort in relying on the person with which you are most familiar. And I think it would be an awfully daunting task immediately upon taking over a football franchise to within a year then have to go out and find someone new to run the franchise and the football operations. And I think there would be a safety and a comfort and familiarity there. And so long as things looked remotely towards the right direction, Ballard was going to be back for that reason. And now, obviously, it looks beyond remotely in the right direction. It looks like they are pushing all in. And that leads me to believe if you're going to push all in at this point, I think Ballard, yes. This does not look like, somebody asked me, does it look like Ballard's trading away picks because he knows that his time is now? No, I think he knows his window is now. Not his year, but his window is now.
I will also add this, Jake, and since the trade was announced, I've been just looking at different stuff. And Sauce Gardner, by the way, has chimed in on Twitter/X, and he just simply tweeted, "Thank you, New York with the green heart." But when you look at the history of Chris Ballard and first-round picks, it's not been great. Like Malik Hooker, Quentin Nelson,
Correct.
like obviously Nelson with the lottery pick. They traded away their pick in 19.
Was Hooker him, or was that Grigson?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Malik Hooker was his first pick that he made as the GM of the Colts. And then Kwity Paye, obviously, Anthony Richardson, Latu, Tyler Warren. Like, there were only two good picks in the Ballard era in the first round. And you traded away, I can't remember if it was one or two for DeForest Buckner. So, and nobody's really complained about that ever since that trade's happened.
It's not Griggs now. But if, the Jim Irsay, Chris is wheeling and dealing. Yeah, that's what's going on.
Chips in. Period.
They are, man. They are. Mo in Ohio. What's up, Mo?
Hey, Jake, Eddie, this is a crazy day. I was thinking back to back in 1987 when the Eric Dickerson monster trade was made, and it was around Halloween at that time. And now here we are in the same thing again. I think in some ways, divine intervention, Jim Irsay still got a hand on the team in making some of those decisions. I also would like to have some of the stuff that Chris Ballard is drinking, because whatever has changed him and everything that's going on, it's crazy. It's just wild.
Mo, here's the thing, and I don't mean to. What's interesting to me, Mo, and I know I use that term a lot, what I'm curious about is this, and we'll never know this answer. We'll never know this answer. But is it possible now that Chris Ballard is making these moves because he has more autonomy to do so?
That may be. I think that could be. But again, you're right. We'll never know. If you remember back, Irsay may have gotten bitten by a couple of the big deals that he had made. Go back to the time of Freddie Young.
Well, Freddie Young's the big one, right? When you sent two number ones for Freddie Young, and then you find out that Freddie Young was done in Seattle because he basically failed a physical because he needed his shoulder rebuilt. That was a disaster. The Dickerson thing was huge, and I still think was the biggest transaction in Indianapolis Colt history because it gave legitimacy to a franchise that otherwise was kind of a laughing stock or an afterthought within the rest of the league. And then you could make the argument as to how it actually worked out long term, but in the short term, it was fabulous. It's a huge deal. Sauce Gardner on his way, two first rounders, and A.D. Mitchell will pass him in the air on the transfer here. All right, what's happening, Todd? Todd, what's up?
Hey, what's happening, Jake? How are you, dude?
Todd, I'm well. I'd like to know your thoughts on this.
Well, I can tell you my thoughts, but I'll leave you with this. I'll keep the call short because you always, Jake, I've been calling your show, even going back to when you were with Derek for 12 years, and you guys always ask me, hey, where do you think the Colts are going to finish? And do you see them winning or losing a game? And I say, nope, I think they're going to win every game this year, and I think they're going to take it right to the Super Bowl. I think for the first time, there might be one of your listeners out there that might actually agree with me.
Now,
for the first time, I think somebody might actually agree with me that listens to your show for the last 12 years.
So, Todd, right now they're 7-2. I'm curious, what do you think their final record will be at the end of the year?
Well, I failed math at Ball State, but they're going to lose 2 games. They're going to take it right to the Super Bowl, whatever that amount is.
Okay. Now, let me ask you this. Ball State, real quick, before I let you go, chirp for the Cardinals. Your thoughts on Ball State's football season?
Not bad. They just had a big win. Am I right?
So they beat Ohio a couple of weeks ago. Then they dropped one. Where do they stand right now, Eddie? I'd like to know your thoughts on what you think Ball State will do moving forward, Todd.
I think they went out and they take it to a bowl game, Jake. What do you think?
Sounds good to me. Love their coach. I'll say that. I love their coach. Eddie, where do we stand with Ball State football?
Mike Yurimovich's team, they're 3-5. They lost to Northern Illinois, but they beat Akron the week before that.
Okay.
Kent State, Eastern Michigan, Toledo, Miami of Ohio remaining.
And you're saying they run the table, right, Todd?
That's right. That's a piece of cake. They get 6 games. They win 6 games. They take it right to a bowl.
Okay, lastly, Todd, before we let you go, we got 6 months before it happens. Who's going to win the 500?
Ooh, that's a good question. Look, I don't think anybody's beating Alex Pillow, but I will tell you this, the amount of talent that IndyCar is breeding, it's going to get extremely competitive and fun to watch.
I thought you were going to say Charlie Kimball.
Golly, if Charlie Kimball comes back and gets into a car, nobody's going to beat him.
There you go. Todd, I appreciate it. That's our buddy What's Happening, Todd. John's been waiting patiently. Reaction, Sauce Gardner, Colt. John, what's up?
Oh, shit's in. Period.
That's not bad, John. That's not bad.
Like Jim. Oh, thank you. I was a thespian in high school and college a little bit, but no. Ballard couldn't pull off a deal for one of those elite rushers like Burns or Crosby, but this is arguably better. Sauce is 25, already 2-time All-Pro, has led the league in pass deflections since he debuted. Not as good the last 2 years, but you're talking about a guy who's dependable and dominant when he's on his game, press corner, physical at the line, versatile to play zone or carry routes really anywhere. So perfect fit for Lou. With Mooney Ward on the outside when he's when he's healthy. So this is how you're going to generate a lot more coverage sacks and really put pressure on the quarterback. This is one of the best corner duos in football, and as fans in Indy, we've been waiting for this for a really long time. This says that Ballard's all in, and this is really just something that's super shocking, but also very exciting. It's
John,
really
I think you hit on the big thing there, and I appreciate it. The big thing, and that is the fact that it buys you more time for coverage sacks. I mean, if you can't get your pass rush jump started, this takes care of it. For certain, takes care of it. We'll come back. We'll get more reaction. By the way, we will go to New York, 2 o'clock, 35 minutes from now. Janae Coakley, SNY, covers the New York Jets. Will give us the perspective of what the Colts are getting in Sauce Gardner above and beyond what we know, statistically speaking, and John's fabulous breakdown. We'll do it all on the other side. Your continued calls at 239-1070. Big one today. Sauce Gardner on his way to the Colts. It is the biggest move in the NFL, and the Colts clearly are now pushing in on what they believe is a team on the cusp. It has been a crazy stretch in Central Indiana. If you go back in the last 6 months, you have the NBA Finals and the Indiana Pacers being the epicenter of the NBA world. And I know that Oklahoma City won it, but, I mean, the Pacers were and still are a captivating story. And Miles Turner now feverishly sending thank you cards to Sauce Gardner and the Indianapolis Colts for getting booed out of Gainbridge Fieldhouse, putting that on the back burner now. And then you have the college football side of things. And Kurt Signetti and Indiana, who I firmly believe tonight at 8 o'clock should be. They won't be. I get it. But Indiana should be the number one team in the first college football rankings tonight at 8 o'clock because they have the most impressive win of the year at Oregon. And that is better than any win that Ohio State has. And yes, Indiana's going to have to go to Penn State this weekend and beat a team that Ohio State just beat up on. And Ohio State's fantastic, don't get me wrong, and probably could have more lopsided than they have. But Indiana has been a remarkable story in college football. Purdue begins tonight at 6:30 against Evansville as the number one team in college basketball. And there is no reason to believe that they do not maintain close to that ranking for the vast majority, if not all of the year. And the best player in college basketball might well be right there on their roster. The Indiana Fever are coming off of a run to the finals where, when you look at the fact that their best players were all out and what they did was truly incredible. The Indy Ignite just finished an inaugural season playing at the Fishers Event Center where they themselves got into the finals of their league and had huge crowds on the regular. And now the biggest trade in the NFL trade deadline day for 2025, I can't not see between now and 4 o'clock why there's going to be another one that would be a bigger splash than this. The Indianapolis Colts and Chris Ballard have made their move and have said, you know what? Because we admit it to most of you. You were hopeful that they would go out and get a Max Crosby or a Trey Hendrickson or somebody that was going to be, this major splash, right? And that they were going to get pass rush. But you resigned yourself to the fact that they were going to either be asleep at the wheel or not be able to broker a deal. And in the end, the deadline would come and pass. And I would be doing the crossover with J&V, and we'd be talking about Miles Turner, and there you go. There's your storyline. Admit it, most of you thought that was going to be the case. But instead, the Colts went out and said, and let's go back to what Stephen Holder was talking about. And let's go back to what this might mean in terms of current personnel on the Colts roster. If you begin with the fact of what Stephen was talking about, I think it is a very fair statement by Stephen, and I think he would know that pass rush is where they were going first. And that's what they were most looking for the last probably week. That they've been making phone calls, and he's done everything he can, has Chris Ballard, to get pass rush help.
Adam Schefter said that the Colts have been working on this deal with the Jets for, quote, weeks.
Okay.
This isn't something that was just today
I don't think it was like a
days.
I mean, you would assume that from the Jets standpoint, it wasn't like they just took a phone call and said, but either way, I do think pass rush is something that they have tried to go after and just they couldn't get anything done. But now that becomes less, it still would be wonderful, but it becomes less in impact because of the fact that you have shut down corners, literally. Now, I am curious, and I know Steven said that he anticipates that Mooney Ward is back and cleared and everything's good there. But you have to be, I say this, I'm not a doctor, and I certainly don't hope this to be the case. But precedent of athlete would tell us that oftentimes concussions of proximity to one another can lend themselves to increased risk of concussion. I hope that's not the case. I'm speaking in generalities there. But if there are players that have had multiple concussions close to one another, then you have to wonder whether or not they are. But Steven said no. Cam Ward's coming back, and they're good there, right? The other thing that you have to consider is the fact that they have, if you remember, let's go back to, and it feels like forever ago. When I'm sitting in Grand Park in Westfield and it's 100 degrees outside and there's like no one there because practice was done at 11 a.m. and there's a rooster crowing. And I and probably a lot of people are thinking, man, this seems to be a lot considering the fact that this is a team that we think is kind of stuck in neutral. There's a ton of question about it. And who this year, Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson, hello 7-10. I think I said, matter of fact, I know. I said 10-7 beginning of the year. I said 10-7. I thought they were going to be a little bit better than they were given credit, but I said 10-7. Now, at that time, what we knew was that Justin Wally was a guy that was playing really, really well for them. Really well. And there was a lot of hope and expectation. Then he gets hurt. And that's a corner. That's a defensive back. Young player, so you can't sit there and say that they know definitively what he was going to be over the course of the year. But the signs were there that he was playing, that he was really good for them, and that they really liked Justin Wally, right? And then the same can be said for Hunter Wohler. Really active safety back there, young player. The necessity, and now you have Jonathan Edwards and other players that you've signed to give you depth at that position, and they have been able to sustain those losses, even though those are players that you didn't know what they were going to be. There's a big difference between camp and regular season. I get it. But they just pushed all in on that, and then you wonder where that falls in terms of next year and beyond. Because Sauce Gardner, when you go for that move, you're all in, and you're paying a big ticket as well. Big ticket. Brandon, I'll get to you. 239-1070 for others that want to chime in on a seismic move for the Colts today, and Janae Coakley, SNY, covers the Jets in 20. You know, a lot of times, and I hope it doesn't belabor the point, when I talk on this show about different things and I use precedent, I go back to like historical precedent with things of the way teams were built or react to and etc. And the gold standard for any franchise is Super Bowl or NBA title or World Series or Final Four or college football national championship. And so if you are a franchise that has reached that pinnacle, sometimes there is messaging within the blueprint. And if you go back to the greatest era of football that this town has seen from an NFL standpoint, certainly Andrew Luck, and when he was healthy, and in particular in the beginning of his career, a continuation of the era that you were coming right off of with the Peyton Manning era Colts. And those teams were designed in many ways to be teams defensively that were there to be pass defense-oriented defenses. In other words, not and I get today in the NFL, it is a more pass-friendly league anyway, although we're starting to see more of a shift back into the running game. But part of what makes this move today also so relevant for the Colts and potentially such a payoff is that now when you have not one but two shutdown corners in Sauce Gardner and Mooney Ward, assuming that he comes back and is healthy and is able to stay healthy, and then you have active safeties, and you are shutting out a passing game. When you look at this Colts offense, and you look at the fact that it is the most prolific offense so far up until the Pittsburgh game, when they take care of the football, certainly, in the NFL, and they can run the ball with Jonathan Taylor, and they can run the ball, don't laugh here, with Tyler Warren in short yardage. They can throw the ball into short yardage with Tyler Warren. They can throw the ball into intermediate coverage with Tyler Warren. They can throw the ball to those areas with Josh Downs. They can throw deep to Alec Pierce. They can throw any of those areas to Alec Pierce. They can throw across the middle to Michael Pittman. And Daniel Jones is, if he's taking care of the football, you factor all of those things in. And what you have is an offense that gets you to a lead where then you know that the opposition has to go to the air. And if the opposition has to go to the air because they know that you are scoring on the vast majority of your possessions and they have to keep track of that and they have to keep up with that, then what you've done now is you've taken that snake and basically cut the head, because you are saying, look, you can run the ball against us, fine, but we're putting up 31 points a game, and there's only so much time in a game when you're running the football, and you got to throw against us, and we got two lockdown corners. And yes, our pass rush is sufficient but not brilliant, but it just became a lot better because good luck getting your guys open. Brandon, 239-1070 is the telephone number. Hi, Brandon.
Good morning, sir.
Now, Brandon, it's
first-time caller.
I will say this, Brandon, it's 10 till 2. Now, for me, it is, in fact, kind of the morning time. But did you just wake up?
No. I've been working all day. It just all bleeds in the morning until I get off work.
I like that. What line of work are you in, Brandon?
I'm in management in a med device manufacturing facility.
Okay. And you said this is your first time calling the program?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, we're happy to have you. What's on your mind today?
Love it. I actually was calling to make a point that you just made. You know, we've talked about pass rush in Indianapolis Colts for quite a while. And, you know, one of the things that I see from a stat perspective is we're 11th in football in pressures on the quarterback. We're currently 6th in sacks. So if you can get, you know, 0.3, 0.4 more seconds of that quarterback in the pocket, how many more of those are going to land, increasing the sack total, putting the team in negative situations. So I just wanted to point out that, you know, it was caught us by surprise, but I think it actually helped a lot with the pass rush, as you just mentioned. So
do you, Brandon, let me ask you this. Does it bother you at all and I'm not saying it should. That sounds like I'm leading the witness. I don't mean it that way. Do you consider 2 first-rounders and A.D. Mitchell too big a price to pay?
A.D. Mitchell, no. Mainly because you can see how explosive he can be, but, our receiving core is deep. You just made that point. I don't see him passing downs or Pierce anytime soon. Tyler Warren is what we all hoped he would be. The 2 first-round picks is a lot, but if it gets you in a position to have an opportunity to win the Super Bowl, that's what the NFL's about, right?
Yeah,
and
I agree. And the other thing, too, Brandon, I appreciate it. And welcome aboard, by the way. We're happy to have you. The other thing.
Welcome to the company.
That's right. Director of Management is what Brandon is. The other thing that comes into play there is if, in fact, this pushes you into the Super Bowl category, and one would assume that it does, that then those first-round picks become like 30th overall. It's different than the Jets trading a first-round pick, which means they're punting on, the 5th overall pick in the draft. Dave, up next. Go, Dave.
Hey, Jake, also long-time listener, first-time caller. I have really appreciated what you just said there about what the pick is. So a couple thoughts. I've been a season ticket holder since '05, so I'm invested. My wife hates the bill. I live and die this team. A couple thoughts I'd love your opinion on. One, we move. Quentin Nelson, Jonathan Taylor, I could go down the list. Hey, one of them could get hurt next year. And we're in a position this year, I think, not just to get to the Super Bowl, but host that game at home. I do think 2 first-rounders is a lot, so I want to continue to kind of think about that through. One thing that I believe is the A.D. Mitchell thing is a little bit of the culture that has changed, maybe because there's a slightly different owner. And I think there's a message being sent that we are going to take care of business first. There's a reason why the best teams and you go to the Belichick era and people can say what they want about him, but there's a way they do business. What he did in L.A. was unacceptable. Obviously, Taylor did it last year. Learn from it. I wonder if this is also a message to the guys on the team that the expectation is we should be hosting the AFC Championship game. We should be playing in the Super Bowl. Final thought, and then I appreciate you taking my call. I've said it for years. It's amazing how good your cornerbacks are when you get a pass rush. And it's amazing, just like the last caller said, how good your linemen are. Your pass rush is, and those cornerbacks are locking down for 2 or 3 or even 4/10 more of a second. So I think this is a message as an organization that we are going for it, but I would love your thoughts on, again, the 2 first-round picks. The point you make is also very well taken. A 30th pick isn't the same as a 4th.
Right.
As always, thanks for taking my call, and I love listening to the show.
Dave, I appreciate it. Listen, I think what this signifies is this. Maybe it's a bad analogy, but it's one that I can use in terms of crosstown. If you know that you have a calf strain, and you know that calf strain has potential to develop into something that is going to knock you out for a year, you probably don't play in January against the Nuggets. But if you know that calf strain and playing through and the risk that comes with it is because you are 4 quarters from potentially winning an NBA title, you push all in and you play. And if you know and you feel deep down like your window is right now with your team and you are right there on the cusp and you are this sort of a move away from pushing all in, to your point, Dave, the other players you see in the National Football League, it stands for not for long. You have no idea how long your window is going to be to have guys together and have them healthy. And so if the window is there and you got a chance and it takes 2 to tango and the other one's willing to waltz with you, you make the move and you go for it and you say, we're going all in. And this is different than if you were right now 3-4, or you're right now 3-5 or whatever it would be through. I guess they're 9 games, 4-5. Clearly, they feel that they are there. And in terms of Chris Ballard, and yes, I agree with A.D. Mitchell. I agree with that perception that there is. I think when you made the move to go to Daniel Jones, part of the reason you went to go to Daniel Jones is because you're like, we want adults in the room. That's not to say that Anthony Richardson's a bad guy, but Anthony Richardson, I don't think, had the maturity yet, professionally speaking. I don't mean he's making fart noises with his armpits. I just mean the professional maturity and focus to dial in. And Daniel Jones is a quarterback that allows you to have the adults in the room, and I think that there is a culture that goes there. In addition to that, with Ballard and this move, I don't know, and it's unfair perhaps to speculate as to whether or not this takes place if the ownership is the same as it was a year ago when Jim Irsay was still there. But I do think that it is fair to wonder. We'll never know the answer. But is this sign now that Chris Ballard has complete and total autonomy with his moves and does not have to worry about, not to say that Jim Irsay would have been against this move. I don't know. But it does feel like, yes, there is a very aggressive, we are going for it approach, and I'm here for it. Joe, real quick, we'll get to you. What's up, Joe?
Hey, I just wanted to comment that with today's NFL rules being what they are and how the plays are being called, do you really think that there is such a thing as a shutdown cornerback? Because, I see these guys getting PI'd all over the place.
Fair.
And the other quick comment I have is that regarding a pass rusher, an edge rusher, Peyton Manning had more to do with Robert Mathis and Dwight Freeney's numbers than anything because they scored a lot of points and they forced the other team to pass.
100% agree with that, Joe. That's what I'm saying. And that's where I think that this move is indicative of the fact that they anticipate being ahead and forcing teams to have to pass the ball a lot. What are they getting in Sauce Gardner? Janae Coakley covers the Jets, joins us next. And you thought it was going to be a day talking about Miles Turner. In fact, the big news of the day, if you are just joining us on the program.
Where have you been?
Thank you, Eddie.
Well, we thank you for being here now.
That is correct. Better late than never. Sauce Gardner, who has started 48 games of the 48 games going into this year that he has played in the National Football League, is on his way to the Indianapolis Colts. And 2 first-round draft picks and A.D. Mitchell are on their way to New York and the Jets. Joining us now on the Java House Peel and Pour guest line. She needs no introduction in Indianapolis, but I will provide one nonetheless. She left Indianapolis after a stint at Wish TV to go to New York and work for SNY in 2010, where her coverage of the Jets won her an Emmy. And Janae Coakley has been covering the Jets since. Joins us now to give perspective. Janae, appreciate the time on what I'm sure is a very hectic day. Welcome back to Indianapolis, and let's begin with this. From a player on-field standpoint, tell us what Indianapolis is getting in Sauce Gardner.
Oh, well, Jake, thanks so much for having me on. I was at Playdate with my children, and then I got the text, the news, and I was like, wait, what? Not what I was expecting whatsoever. As far as Sauce Gardner, you got a pro. He's a great guy. He's a great guy off the field, locker room favorite, and you got a guy on the field who wants to be the best. He can be a lockdown corner. A lot of times he wants to be the best guy. He studies film. He's just a real good guy. You guys got a good one. I'm going to miss Sauce. He's actually one of my favorites.
So I guess that begs the question, Janae, and I realize that things have not gone, especially in the last 2 years. You know, New York is one of those franchises, the Jets, that, gosh, you would know the years better than I, but it seems like within the last 2 or 3 years, it felt like they were on the cusp of maybe being able to make a push. And I know that at the quarterback spot, they're still searching at that. But why do you believe that Sauce Gardner was made available?
2 first-round picks, Jake. I mean, I don't think they were necessarily shopping Sauce, but Muji did say, listen, if they're gonna call and offer me a deal that's gonna blow my socks off, I'm gonna say yes. And you can't say no to 2 first-round picks. And so I think when the Colts came calling, and I think when the Colts said, hey, we'll give you 2 first-round picks, they'll say, okay, let's go, because now for the next 2 years, they have 2 first-round picks, theirs and then the Colts. So I think they're just blown away by that deal, because Sauce was just signed to an extension, a 4-year extension in July.
Yeah.
So he was meant to be a Jet. I mean, he wanted to be a Jet. Aaron Glenn, the Jets' new head coach, is a cornerback. This was his guy, and then, like I said, I just believe that this deal was just too good to pass up.
You know, Janae, we were talking about this in terms of the 2 first round, and I get it. I mean, I get both sides of it, right? I get why the Colts would be willing to part with those 2 picks, and I get why New York would be wanting to get 2 first-round picks, especially if you're in kind of rebuild mode or accentuation mode, whichever it might be for New York. But
yeah.
For the Colts, I guess it's the standpoint that your hope is that these are first-round picks that you're not going to miss because they're going to be like between 28 and 32. You know what I mean? I mean,
yeah,
clearly
100%.
This indicates that the Colts are pushing all in. With Gardner, and you talked about it, his ability to be a lockdown corner. Janae, what sort of, and my apologies for my ignorance of knowing the Jets schematically, in the last year or two, but during the time that he's been there.
I don't think the Jets know what that is.
What's that? Yeah, no kidding.
I'm not
right?
sure the Jets know what they're doing.
Well, what sort of stuff has he had on the other side of him? In other words, has he been a guy that has gotten assistance on the other side as well, or has he been literally like that is their defensive pass coverage?
No, listen, the last 3 years, he's been teamed up with DJ Reed. He's now with the Lions. Who was phenomenal. The secondary has always been the Jets' strong point. This year he's been, they've traded for Brandon Stevens, who's struggled a little bit, but Sauce has never traveled with the number 1 guy until this year, because with Robert Saleh, he didn't travel. So he had DK Metcalf to start the season off. He did a heck of a job. I mean, Sauce is known for handsy. He gets handsy and gets a lot of PI penalties, and not known for turnovers, but they don't throw the ball his way. He's no Darrelle Revis, but I think he's young. He's in his prime. He's long. He's lean, and he matches up really well with the big receivers, and he can travel with them. So I think he's one of the. Do I think he's the best corner? Not necessarily. I think you can make an argument that Singletary's up there, and I mean, obviously, but he's top 5, no doubt in my mind.
Janae, you mentioned, and this is the perspective that I appreciate. Janae Coakley, my guest on the Java House Peel and Pour guest line with SNY in New York. She covers the Jets. I think the Colts, and every team says this, Janae, you know this. I mean, you've covered a ton of teams, and you and I probably talked about this kind of thing. Literally every team is like, no, we have a great culture, great locker room. You know, that's the thing that everybody preaches that, right? But it seems as though the Colts are that is important of where they're going moving forward. And when you look at, or can you give a perspective, I guess, and elaborate on the character maturity of Sauce Gardner, and in particular, whether or not that's tested now by going from a situation of familiarity to one that probably he was even surprised by?
I think Sauce Gardner is the guy. Again, he was one. They just signed him to an extension in July. I mean, $120.4 million. He was going to be one of the pieces to rebuilding, and Aaron Glenn was trying to build this culture because that's the type of guy Sauce is. Sauce is a guy that you want to build around, and he's the guy who's always going to talk to the media whether they win or lose. He's the guy that's going to take the blame if it's him or not. He works hard. He loves to study film. He's not a party guy by any means. Like, he loves football. He went back to school to get his degree because he promised his mom he was going to do it. I mean, he's just a real good guy who wants to play football and wants to be good. And like I said, the Jets weren't necessarily shopping him around. Like I said, I think the Colts came with them with a deal that you cannot pass up, especially for a team who, like you said, is still looking for that quarterback, who's still missing a lot of pieces, who's trying to build a culture, and they need, I mean, again, 2 first-round picks for the next 2 years.
By the way,
they're willing to give up their 2-time All-Pro cornerback, Sauce Gardner.
Janae, when you go to dinner, what's your favorite sauce?
BBQ, baby.
Okay, I can't argue with that. I cannot argue with some barbecue sauce, right? I always say when I go out and I get barbecue, oftentimes like whichever meat I'm getting is just a conduit for me having more of the sauce, right? It's just the facilitator of the barbecue sauce. Janae, the Jets in general and this move within the rest of the locker room, and I know that the focus here in Indianapolis is on the Colts, obviously, and not the Jets. But I am curious because of what you talk about there. He's a younger guy. Is this a guy that, even though he's 25, Sauce Gardner, that has been a focal point within that locker room of leadership that even more veteran players look towards?
Yeah, I do, and I think he was just really wanted to take the next step to be the leader. To be the guy, the young guys that they look up to. They have a young safety, a secondary room, and he wanted to be that guy, and he was really starting to. And again, the Jets team is a younger team, and we laughed at. I interviewed him during training camp. He's like, I'm like, Sauce, you're one of the veterans now. He was like, I know, and I like that role. I embrace that role. This is what I want. So I think he's a guy, and again, he's proven on the field that he can be one of those good players. Like, he knows how to study. He wants to study. He wants to get better. He wants the number one receiver on him. That's who he wants. He's always wanted to travel and with the number one receiver. So he wanted that. So I think you're going to get a guy in that locker room, a Colts guy in the locker room, that players are going to want to be around and want to get better. He's going to bring that secondary room up.
Which do you think is the bigger football surprise in New York as it relates to Indianapolis, Janae Coakley? The fact that Sauce Gardner's been traded here, or the fact that Daniel Jones is having the season he's having?
Now, I cover the Jets. So for the Jets,
I know.
It's going to be Sauce Gardner. I mean, I'm not kidding you, Jake. We were all like, wait, what? What? That happened? Like, no, Sauce Gardner, no. That's the one. Him and Garrett Wilson are the 2 guys that no one's given up. But I think if you go to the other side of the city, Daniel Jones, wow. What? That's crazy.
Now, the Jets just picked up, Eddie, another first-round draft pick while we're on the air with Janae, correct?
Yeah, so this is from Ian Rappaport, Janae. The Dallas Cowboys are trading for Quinnen Williams, and they are sending a first-round pick to the Jets.
Okay, so there we go. Now we know what the Jets are doing, cleaning some house and getting some first-round picks.
Janae, you're going to have to go out and get some name tags, by the way. I know you're at playtime with the kids, and we'll let you get to work here in a second, but you're going to have to get name tags for the locker room, just so you know, right?
Yeah, what the heck? Now, Quinnen, I'll be honest with you, this doesn't surprise me as much as the Sauce Gardner. I kind of, if anybody would have said, when I was actually at a play date and they're like, someone said something about a Jets trade, I literally said, I think it's Quinnen. I had no idea about Sauce, but they're blowing up things now. So I gotta go.
Lastly, will there be opportunity for A.D. Mitchell in New York? And I know that New York is wading through the quarterback situation, but in terms of receiver spots, will A.D. Mitchell get reps?
125% sure that he will get reps. The Jets have Garrett Wilson. They're still looking for that number 2 and number 3.
Gotcha. All right.
So,
Janae, listen, I can only imagine how busy it was for you all of a sudden, and the last thing you probably wanted was to look down and think, oh, okay, great, Jake wants me to go on with him on the fan. But you made time for it, and we always appreciate it, and it is really good perspective on Sauce Gardner.
You're going to enjoy him. He's awesome. Tell him I said hello when you see him, because you guys are probably heading to Berlin. He's probably heading to Berlin right now, if I had to guess, right?
Correct. Well, I mean, I would assume that this.
That's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, he's going to be, and let's just hope that this goes better than the last former Jet that the Colts took overseas with them, and Antonio Cromartie, which did not go well when they went to London, but that was a long time ago.
My money's on a young Sauce Gardner, ready to win.
Well, he's going to have plenty of chance to do that. Janae, I appreciate it, all right? Enjoy everything out there.
Thank you, guys. Always fun.
All right, Janae Coakley joining us from SNY in New York. Really good stuff. And, here's what I love. And I love the perspective that she gave there. I knew nothing about Sauce Gardner as a guy. Nothing. And Janae, for those that are unfamiliar, Janae Coakley worked at Channel 8. I think most know this. But she's been in New York now for, a decade and a half and covering the Jets. And with that, the perspectives that you can get by being inside the locker room and just seeing and talking to guys and the way that players react to them and the way that players gravitate towards them. And, younger players in particular. Sauce Gardner, the one thing that I recall about him, and I'm 99% certain that I'm correct in this. I'm 99% certain that I'm correct in this. Somebody send me a text or message me if I'm wrong in this. I'm almost certain that Sauce Gardner is the one that when he was drafted, and I can't remember, can you look up, Eddie, the year that Sauce Gardner was drafted? Then where was that draft being held? Because, and I know that, there were 795,000 people there for it, but it was one of those drafts where the draft stage and the green room were like several blocks apart from each other. And if I'm not mistaken, Sauce Gardner is the one that when maybe I'm wrong in this. Who am I thinking of? That they got drafted and the television camera followed them as they walked all the way down this long hallway and then around this way, and like the 45-second walk that these guys had to do, and Sauce Gardner was the one that went the wrong way. And then all of a sudden they're like, no, dude, you got to turn around and go back all the way the other way. And it was either Sauce Gardner or who was the help me out, Eddie. Who was the one that
it was Sauce.
Was it Sauce Gardner?
Yes.
And so, you don't know anything about what players are like. You get indication. And I think, for example, this trade might tell you as much about the direction the Colts feel they're going. And I think it was Dave that pointed this out. And I could not agree more. When A.D. Mitchell had the game against the Rams, a disaster. He dropped the football early. He made a heck of a play. He got the penalty that negated a Taylor run. It wasn't even necessarily for A.D. Mitchell the manner in which he had that implosion. It was his response or lack thereof. It was the fact that I thought, I'm not going to say sulked. That's unfair. But it didn't seem like he was a guy that stepped in and said, no, I'm bouncing back from this. It seemed like it impacted him. And maybe there's a little bit of the bias of perception or preconceived notion about him, because when he was drafted, and he was, I believe, the 13th receiver taken in the draft and that year. And when he was drafted, the one critique of him was immaturity. And that immaturity showed itself not only in the action on field against the Rams, but I thought personally in the reaction to it. And sending him out is sending a message. This sends a message externally to the rest of the NFL. We're all in. And we are making a push, and we believe the time is now. And I think it sends a message to the locker room of, you better be all in. We are. Are you? And no matter your talent, and yes, A.D. Mitchell was in a position where they had the luxury of being able to afford reducing somebody in that position. But sending him is a message of, you better be completely dialed in. What did we see at the quarterback position? We have a guy taking snaps who has now justified the decision, but the decision that was made because we believed that it was an all-encompassing thing.
Trade is officially official. The Colts tweeted 15 minutes ago, Jake, the terms of the trade.
And it is, in fact, 2 first-rounders and A.D. Mitchell.
Yep, a 2026 first, a 2027 first, and Adonai Mitchell for Sauce Gardner.
Okay, the other thing when it comes to emotional maturity is that of what took place last night with Miles Turner. Miles Turner was and still is, an exceptional basketball player. And Miles Turner, during his time with the Pacers, was asked to be several different people. And he did so very admirably. In the beginning of his time here, he was a guy that was going to be the next face of the franchise. And then it became Oladipo's team. And then it became, obviously, to some extent, Sabonis. And then, obviously, Halliburton's team. And Miles Turner was a guy that was asked to be a rim protector and a facilitator and an offensive facilitator in terms of his passing and his outside shooting and etc. And during the course of all of that, Miles Turner was, in fact, a really good member of the community of Indianapolis. He did charitable things. He was always a good citizen. He was always, by all account, a good teammate. And he was a good partner and representative of the Pacers franchise. He was everything in that regard that you would want. No doubt. And I don't know him well, but I like him in the times that I've been around him and find him to be a very pleasant and friendly individual. But professionally and emotionally, Miles Turner, I think, has shown an immaturity in this regard. Last night was his first game back at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. And what surprises me is this. Miles Turner was so much a part of this community that it surprised me that he missed the mark in the one aspect of it. Miles Turner missed the mark on the fact that this community is a little bit different. We're different than Chicago and Miami and Dallas and Phoenix and Los Angeles and New York. We're different in the fact that this is not a destination city. Those of us that live here love it and embrace it and take pride in it. And part of that pride that we have in Indianapolis is that inferiority complex chip on the shoulder of wanting to be able to show those other places that I mentioned that, yeah, you know what, we can contend too. But because of the fact that Indianapolis is and never will be a regional hub like Chicago, is and never will be a coastal city like Los Angeles or Washington, D.C. or New York, is and never will be a warm weather destination place like a Miami. It's a place where we do the best that we can. And we fell in love with and bonded with the Pacers teams that made it to the finals of the Eastern Conference and made it to the NBA Finals because we loved the fact that they too were doing the best that they could. And that included Miles Turner. But Miles Turner, over the course of that time, consistently heard his name mentioned in trade rumors, in trade suggestions, and much of that you could block out as hyperbole noise from those that were farming for clicks on the internet. And that doesn't mean that my bosses feel that way about me. I hear all the time about I'm rumored that they want to get rid of me for this guy or that guy, but yet when I walk into the offices, they tell me that that's not true. And that's one thing to be able to do all of that and focus. But when the Pacers made the contract offer to DeAndre Ayton and gave him an offer sheet, then I think Miles Turner, in the back of his mind, that little person on the shoulder was saying, they were right. Everyone was right, Miles. You are trade rumor. You are trade bait. You are disrespected. You are overlooked. And then the other side of his shoulder would say, no. You're an important part of this team, and Halliburton feeds off of your rim protection and facilitating the other way, and they love the fact that you hit threes, and you are the guy that is hugging Nancy Leonard and that they're giving the hat to when you win the East, and you're the guy that holds up the trophy because you are the face, long-tenured pillar of this franchise. And then free agency comes, and the contract offer is made, and that little guy on the right shoulder against us, I told you, they disrespected you. And Miles Turner, in that regard and that emotion, I get it. I'm not saying he's wrong. I understand the insecurity within. I understand the conflict that can create emotionally. But where he's emotionally immature or off base is the fact that he never then stepped back to say, but that exact emotion that is driving you and making you want to go to Milwaukee and making you want to get back at the Pacers front office, that exact emotion that mirrors exactly the inferiority complex that drives the people of Indianapolis is the reason that you should understand that this city considers the Pacers themselves. And when you call out the Pacers front office, it's different than calling out the front office of the Heat. It's different than calling out Jim Dolan and the Knicks. It's different than calling out, Jeannie Buss and the Lakers or whatever ownership group there is now. Rob Pelinka and the Lakers. It's different because we in this town consider ourselves as a fan base to be representative of the franchise. And when Miles Turner wants to say, no, I wasn't talking about the fans. I wasn't talking about the roster. I was just talking about the front office that I felt like disrespected me. What he erred in seeing in the time that he was here is that this is a market that feels a kinship, a fraternal feeling, and a family bond with that franchise and what it represents. And so when he says things like, the Pacers did me wrong, what he didn't realize is that in turn to the fan base, what they hear is the Pacers fans did me wrong, because Pacers fans consider themselves family with the organization. And there is a bond there and a connection there that probably doesn't exist in a lot of places. But Miles Turner, in terms of wanting to, all of us can relate to work situations where you feel slighted, or you feel like you didn't get the raise you wanted, or you didn't get enough vacation time, or Betty in accounting got the award at the holiday dinner that you thought that you should have gotten, or that Jim down the hall should have gotten. All of us have gone through those things. And all of us at times are driven and fueled by them. So we can relate to all of that. But it's the fact that then, when he left, he started talking about Jim down the hall and Sally in accounting. And people in this town as fans took that personally. They took it personally. And for him to be surprised by the fact that people took that personally is personally surprising. I don't know how he could have expected or anticipated otherwise. I think he's a good guy. I think he was a good soldier here. I think he was a good part of the community. But at the same time, I think he erred in reading the room. And it is ironic that while he was being booed at Gainbridge Fieldhouse during the video that the Pacers did for him, it is ironic that he did that motion of closing the book in his hand. Because, in fact, what he was closing was the book that he didn't read the right way, and it was the room itself and the temperate of it. But I thought the Pacers played really well, and there were some signs that were optimistic, even if it means long-term and not short. Scott Agnes, Fieldhouse Files, will discuss with me next. So Ron from Chicago's Pizza that was with me last night at the Pacer game just sent me a really good question. I mean, an extreme hypothetical, but if the Colts put themselves in position where at the end of the year, let's just say, because the AFC South, they've got a pretty good hold on that, and let's say that they continue to play really well and win games, and they've got a situation where in the last 2 weeks of the year, they're locked in at their playoff seed. If Richardson is back and healthy, do they put him in for the second half of a couple of games to try to get some draft capital back and make him available so teams can see, like, hey, you know what? This guy, now that he's got a tight end and some players around him, is a pretty good player and looks like he's still got it there. We'll give up a third rounder for him.
Well, is he going to be healthy enough to play is the question that I have.
I mean, that's the thing. Well, what I'm saying is that would, at the very least, it allows them to show that he is, in fact, healthy, right?
Yeah.
But we had a lot of fun last night at the Pacer game, and I know that the result was not what people wanted. It was one of those where, at least for me, you walked away and you went, you know what? They had one of the 5 best players on the planet hit a shot that was basically, guarded in every way possible, that you just go, you know what? Let me shake your hand. You hit that shot. And I know that Giannis, in booing to the crowd, I mean, he was having the back of his new teammate there in Miles Turner. But there were some things that were positives to take away from it. Joining us now on the Java House Peel and Pour guest line, he is with Fieldhouse Files, Scott Agnes, joining us. And Scott, we'll begin with this before we get to some of the positives, and that is, I guess, just your overall reaction to the reaction of Miles Turner.
Yeah, none of it really surprised me, given the way in which things went down over the last couple of months. He's an emotional guy. He's an introvert. He takes things and feels things deeply. And so since he moved on in July, I mean, let's not forget the fact, Jake, that not one of his teammates posted anything on social media to wish him well. And so I think a lot of fans understandably saw that and backed their own guys and said, wow, if they're not happy, we're not happy. And then what made it worse, Jake, was, of course, the fact that several things that he said and then had to clarify, that does not go over well with all of that. If he purely just moved on, I've heard from a lot of Pacer fans on social media, and most are not annoyed or bothered by that. They get it. Look, a guy could basically double what the Pacers were offering. 3 years, $22 million per year. Instead, he got another year and an additional $5 million per year. It was the right business decision for him. I just wish it was a much better and cleaner divorce, separation, whatever, just given all the different things. He had been the guy that had been loyal, that had backed his teammates, that had been through the double bigs experiment with Domantas Sabonis, that never hung his head. That was that safety net defensively when the Nate Bjorkgren experience was going on. There's so many telltale points with all this. I know as not a fan, I don't feel it as much here, Jake, but it was sad that during the celebration video, which something the Pacers did not do until 3 years ago, perhaps for reasons like this, and where do you stop about doing a video and not? But I wish he could have felt a standing ovation. He could have felt the thank yous from Pacer fans, and then during the game, do whatever you want because he's on the other team.
Yeah, listen, the most recent comments he had about Tyrese Halliburton, I thought were taken out of context if you listen to it in totality. It was the other stuff that was said. And like I said, when he keeps talking about, I wanted to go somewhere where I'm loved, or loved is the wrong word, but valued, etc. And I think there are just a lot of people that were like, look, man.
Having the best chance to be competitive?
Having the best chance to be competitive, yeah. I mean, I think there are a lot of people that are like, look, come on, man. Now, having said let's get to the positives. What's that, Scott?
The one thing that stood out to me, Jake, sorry to interrupt there, is during his Vegas press conference. The one that got me is I think this was clearly on purpose, he refused to even mention the Pacers. A couple times even mentioned, hey, my former team or whatever. That's where it felt a little awkward. Maybe it was immaturity or something. He was going through this for the first time. But to not be able to celebrate what got you this contract in those 10 years in Indianapolis, to me, that's where it was a failure from the beginning.
Yeah, hard to argue any of that. Look, after the game, I did notice that, I think just about somebody mentioned that they didn't see Halliburton give him a hug, or The other one was maybe Siakam, but I mean, I don't know. I think pregame he might have gone around and talked to everybody. I don't know. But let's get to this, Scott. I thought it was a very fitting game because, I mean, literally, at one point I looked over to my right and I'm thinking to myself, okay, Halliburton's not out there. Nembhard's not out there. You know, Furphy late was not out there. Quentin Jackson was not out there. On and on and on, right? We know all the injuries. McConnell's not out there. And yet they kept doing Pacer things. I don't know if it's the brilliance of Rick Carlisle. I don't know if it's just the spirit of that locker room. But again, twice I think they got down double digits and came roaring back and found themselves in position again. How long can they sustain this? I know
we
they
saw
didn't
it all
win,
of
but
last
you get what
season.
I'm saying, right?
Yeah, I mean, the reality is they're going to need to for the next month or so. It's really very similar to last season where it's get to December, and we don't know the exact timeline, but generally speaking here, then you'll get Nembhard back, you'll get Matherin back, other guys might be a little healthier, and then you see where you are and push forward there kind of right around the finals of the NBA Cup. But in the short term, the thing is you got a lot of players playing to prove it. A lot of young guys that are finally getting opportunity. And then on the back end, some of the names you listed off, it's guys still trying to prove it at this level on two ways, or Mac McClung had never signed a standard contract until now, or Jeremiah Robinson Earl getting late minutes there and contributing in some good ways there. And so I think it's number one, the culture that Rick Carlisle established when he got here. And then as part of that, it's that hard play mentality and making no excuses about it. But you're right, win or loss, it is remarkable that these are even games sometimes, given the combinations and the unfamiliarity some of them have with one another. But the disappointment, obviously, is one game after another, there's another player either added to the injury list or back on it, like is the case with Furphy as well as Quentin Jackson last night.
Is Jarris Walker growing up before our very eyes? Is it finally happening?
I think so, in baby steps. Year 3, getting that opportunity, had to sit and just watch last season during the NBA Finals, which had to tear you up, right? Like, he would have played a role against that team, given their length and size and athleticism and the need for defense at times and those certain things. And so, yeah, I thought last night and a couple games ago were a perfect example of him taking more on his plate, him looking for his shots, him being more patient offensively. Certainly tons of room for growth, and I think that's what is encouraging here. But him getting a start and making the most of it was a very favorable sign in this current makeup of what they have to get accomplished with little means right now.
But I think, for me, Jarris Walker, Scott, is finally showing two things. He's showing an aggressive, an aggression coming off the curl where he's looking for the ball because he wants to attack the basket. And if that's not the case, he is not afraid to then pull up for a three, but he's using both hands. He had a couple of plays last night where he finished with his left, and he just looks he looks finally like the offense is instinctive to him and not reactionary to him. Do you agree or disagree?
Yeah, I agree, and I think he's right on time. I wouldn't say he's behind by any means either. I mean, Donnie Walsh taught us years ago, my first years on the beat, you got to give these players 3, sometimes centers 4 years to figure out what they are. Well, here's Jarris Walker making the most of his opportunity. You're right. I think you're seeing a lot more balance in what he's contributing, because the book on him coming in, versatile defender, can defend almost every position, can space the floor well, play within whatever defense you're wanting, and then also get to the basket, knock down some shots. And I think he's shown a lot more than that and will continue to do so.
Okay, now the other side of it, Isaiah Jackson.
Yeah.
Last night I was very encouraged with Isaiah Jackson, and it seemed like, because I was worried, Scott, and I know it's really early, so it's unfair, but I was worried that Isaiah Jackson coming off the Achilles might have lost a little bit of what we saw from Isaiah Jackson before, and notably because that's the blueprint on what we then will see different. Everybody's different. I get it. But if Halliburton's coming back, same injury, how much does a player lose, etc. I thought Jackson last night, for the first time, started to show a little bit of who we thought he could be. But is that also sustainable?
Amazing what great motivation can do, right? Like you could hear from him the night before when he was asked about this matchup. He go, "Oh, we'll be ready. We'll be ready." That shows the other side when talking about how we started this conversation with Miles Turner. Jackson was the protege, the next in line, was supposed to be his backup for the next several years. And so he certainly rose to the challenge and showed great glimpses, I thought. And keep in mind here, it was today 1 year ago when he had surgery. So, I mean, the Achilles injury is one of the worst there is. And I almost feel like it's not fair to completely judge one of those players until maybe a year and a half in, when they completely have their footing, their confidence. They're not looking down every step, that sort of thing. And I thought he looked a lot more confident. And let's be real, the biggest thing is he stayed out of foul trouble the last couple of games. That's the thing that's really slowed him down very early in games when he gets 4 fouls in 6 minutes and then isn't on the bench in until the third quarter. And then you can't play the same way because you're overthinking. Again, there's growing pains, and he's just 23 years old. But you are exactly right. I thought last night was a big moment for Jackson in a big situation going against Miles Turner.
Lastly, Scott, do we have any update on the status moving forward of Quentin Jackson or Johnny Furphy, both of which had injury last night?
No, nothing yet, mostly because the team had no practice today, and so expecting an update as soon as 5 o'clock when we'll have the injury update. That is announced before tomorrow's game, but both injuries, I mean, I read reports where Johnny Furphy was on crutches post-game. Well, that suggests he's going to certainly need some time, and then a hamstring, same leg for Quentin Jackson. That's the trouble with hamstrings, is they just linger, and something clearly just, he felt it.
Quentin Jackson just was like, look, I'm going right to the locker room. Like, I don't even know if he waited till the timeout, right?
Yeah, and those guys know right away. And so just knowing basketball, that's probably at least 2 weeks for him. Hopefully that's the minimum. But again, it looks like 2 injuries that are going to be on the list for a short time here, unfortunately. And given both guys that had showed signs of really breaking out and taking advantage of this opportunity. But we're at about double digits now, Jake, of players on the injury report. It's just not fun to cover going from Fever to Pacers now.
Yeah, no doubt. It was, and again, and Furphy, for those that missed it, Furphy had a break. It looked like he was going to try to set up for a dunk, and on the baseline just, ended up going down and then got up and tried to limp for another set or two and then timeout, and he found his way to the sidelines as well.
It makes me wonder why more players, Jake, don't wear high-top shoes, because it felt like this type of injury.
I know.
Yeah, it felt like this type of injury would have been prevented. We don't know, but the way in which it rolled on a low top, way more likely.
I mean, psychologically, if anything, you just feel it's weird. You feel psychologically like you've got like some sort of brace or protection there. All right, Scott, Fieldhouse Files coverage for the Pacers moving forward. Appreciate the time as always.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jake.
Scott Agnes joining us on the Java House Peel and Port guest line. Again, a reminder, code JAKE25 for 25% off your order at Java House. And if you do the bundle, which is Colombian coffee, the Wrangler Energy, and the Liquid Science hydration drinks, perfect, by the way, after a workout or for the kids after practice. Big savings. Just go and type in my name or 1075 The Fan. Literally, my first name works. On the search bar on Java House, and then Jake25 is the code for 25% off. We'll come back. It is The Crossover, brought to you by Love Heating and Air, love-hvac.com, 317-353-2141 for Love Heating and Air. We'll hand it off to John next. Singing about is the tango. We know that it takes two to do exactly that. And Chris Ballard found a dance partner in the New York Jets. Sauce Gardner is on his way to Indianapolis in exchange for 2 first-rounders and A.D. Mitchell. Purdue getting underway tonight, 6:30 against Evansville, the number 1 Boilers, to begin their quest towards maintaining in that position. Tonight, college football playoff rankings come out for the first time at 8 o'clock. Again, I said earlier, I know that it will not be the case. I think Indiana should be number 1. I'm sure they won't, but either way, they are going to be, at the worst, I would think, number 2. JMV has arrived. He's got a big show lined up, I would imagine, and I have a feeling I know what a vast majority of the conversation will be about, John.
Yeah, I was going to talk a little Major League Baseball. End result of the season.
That's right. Get somebody out from Toronto, talk about the disappointment.
So you know where I really want to go with this, but I'm not gonna because you know what I mean. You know, you and I'm being very cryptic just between you and I right there. You know where I really want to go, but I'm not.
So. I hear you. I do know, actually.
So we'd have fun with that too, but then we'd end up getting it right back. So it would be pretty funny though. No, I don't know what this and how this will work out, but I do know this is what I wanted. This is what you wanted. I think everybody was fairly, if not completely, unanimous about what they wanted out of this trade deadline. And this is Chris Ballard and the Colts acting differently during free agency, doing what they did, and now acting differently going into the trade deadline, knowing what you have and not thinking about the future and building the future, thinking about what you've accomplished at 7-2 right now in the AFC. What you need is obvious, and going out and getting somebody that you believe can be a difference maker in that capacity. That's what they did. Now, we may end up having to wear the fact that they gave him, maybe one of these days, Jake, it'll read, well, they gave up too much for Sauce Gardner. But right now, I don't think anybody's going to suggest that because you're doing what you're trying to do to build in the moment, in the now on this team, and it makes total sense.
Yeah, again, and the other thing, John, that I keep going to, Chris Ballard, no one loves draft capital more than Chris Ballard, right? And to give up 2 first-rounders, to me, that means he knows or anticipates that they are going to be very late first-rounders because he expects now for them to be all in and make a deep run that is going to be drafting, 30th. That's a sweet shirt you got on.
Thank you, buddy. Sub Pop, Seattle, Washington, down with draft capital. I hate draft capital about as much as I wanted to hear about entertaining losses last night. Surely we can't start that dorkery, that nerdery again,
can we? Moral victory last night. They did play hard, you got to admit.
They did play hard. Yeah, but they lost. They did play hard. So, yeah. And hopefully this all works out the way that I think everybody wants it to work. I don't know about you, but I want to go to Santa Clara with Bullseye coming up here in late January, early February. So, hell yeah. Let's go.
Listen, that's – and, they're in the position now – look at the teams, John. If you look at who we anticipate, let's just say the Colts stay healthy and are on this trajectory, right? Who are the 2 teams that you would anticipate are going to be the roadblocks between where they are and getting to the Super Bowl? Kansas City or Buffalo? And what do those teams do well? Pass the ball. And now they've got, if Mooney Ward comes back, you've got basically shutdowns on both sides, right?
Yeah. And think about just within the division, too, because you do have Jacksonville kind of getting a little sneaky there. We know that. They go out and get Jacoby Myers early in the day, a wide receiver. Travis Hunter is injured. I know that Thomas has been dealing with injuries too, but they go out and try to solidify a position, Jake, that they needed to solidify, just like the Colts did today. I mean, it all makes sense. We've just not been down this path, and frankly, I don't think we've been sitting in this position watching this team play right now where it made overwhelming sense to go down this particular path. But I'm glad that they have. I'm glad that they're going for it, and I love the enthusiasm that this has injected into the Colts fan base in Indy right here. It's awesome.
Did you go last night, by the way?
I did not. I watched from home. I watched Daenerys and Quinn and JJ and Eddie Gill.
Could you hear the boos through?
Oh, yeah. I heard it.
Yeah. I mean,
I completely understand it, too. I'm not mad at anybody for doing it, and I've tried to explain as to why. And, Miles has, said, he says sometimes all the right things, and then other times None of the right things. So he needs to balance that out better. Somebody needs to advise when he talks, especially when he gets loose and company he feels really comfortable with. He needs some better advice because he's the one that blanked all this. Nobody cares that he left. Everybody would still be on him if he left for money, but I understand that. You understand that, right? You leave from Milwaukee, but it's just what you say about your team, and this team here wants to win, and they embrace me, and the fans embrace me. And all that stuff will come back to haunt you. You have to wear that. In the last 4 months, that's been a lot of the dialogue, and he presently, Jake, is wearing that.
Yeah, he definitely.
And I'll tell you what else he's wearing. He's wearing the Sabonis years in Milwaukee because he's going to be staked out in the, what should I call it, the Mick Bjorkgren offense, the McMillan Bjorkgren offense. He's going to be in the corner while Giannis does what Giannis wants to do, and that's never worked well for him, and it's not going to work well for him.
Spent a lot of time in the corner last night.
And then and you wait until he plays with Karl Anthony Towns and Miles McBride whenever Giannis wants to leave for New York, too, because that's going to come up next year.
Don't put the baby in the corner.
Yeah.
All right,
Tough
John's
situation.
up next. We will be back with you. Thanks to everybody that texted in, by the way, as well. It was a busy, busy afternoon with that news. John will have more of it next, and I thank you for listening to Query & Company.